In one of Mexico's wealthiest neighborhoods, a 4-year-old girl disappeared from her bedroom in the middle of the night. For 9 days, police officers, tracking dogs, forensic experts, family members, and journalists searched every inch of that home. They looked in closets, under furniture, through every room. The media broadcast live from inside that very bedroom. And then, on the 9th day, her tiny body was found wedged at the foot of her own bed, in a space that had already been searched multiple times. This is the story of Paulette Gebara Farah, and what happened in that room remains one of the most controversial cases in Mexican history. Before we go any further, please hit like so more people can see this case, and subscribe to the channel with all notifications on, so you never miss a cold case investigation. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Paulette Gebara Farah was born in 2005 into a life of privilege in Huixquilucan de Degollado, a municipality in the state of Mexico known for its affluent gated communities. Her home was located in La Herradura, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in the entire region, where security was tight and crime was rare. She lived with her parents, Mauricio Gebara and Lizette Farah, and her older sister, Lizette. But Paulette's life was not without its challenges. She had been born with developmental disabilities that affected her mobility and speech. She could not walk without assistance, and she was unable to communicate verbally in the way most children her age could. Despite these challenges, she was described by those who knew her as a bright, loving little girl who brought joy to her family. Because of Paulette's needs, her parents hired 2 live-in nannies, sisters named Erica and Martha Casimiro. The 2 women had worked for the Gebara family for 7 years, helping to care for Paulette and her sister, managing the household routines, and providing the constant attention that Paulette required. Every morning, one of the nannies would wake the girls, help them get dressed, make their beds, and prepare them for the day. It was a routine that had been followed without incident for years. On the evening of March 21, 2010, the Gebara family returned home from a short 3-day vacation. It had been a weekend getaway, and by all accounts, it was an ordinary trip. Paulette had been with her father and her older sister. When they arrived back at the house that Sunday night, the family settled back into their normal routine. Paulette was put to bed in the room she shared with her parents, in her own small bed. The house was quiet. The gates were locked. Security cameras monitored the perimeter. Everything seemed normal. The next morning, March 22nd, Erica Casimiro, one of the nannies, entered the bedroom to begin the morning routine. It was her turn that day to wake the children and help them get ready. But when she approached Paulette's bed, the little girl was not there. The bed was unmade, the sheets were rumpled, but Paulette was gone. At first, Erica thought perhaps Paulette had been moved during the night, maybe taken into her parents' bed or into another room. But that didn't make sense. Paulette couldn't walk on her own. She couldn't have left the room without help. Erica immediately alerted Martha, her sister, and together they began searching the house. They checked the bathrooms, the closets, the living areas. They called out Paulette's name. Nothing. Panic began to set in. They went to Lizette and Mauricio's room and woke them, asking if they had taken Paulette somewhere during the night. The parents were confused, then alarmed. Oh, they said they had not moved her. They had not seen her since she was put to bed the night before. Within minutes, the house erupted into frantic activity. Lizette Farah called her sister-in-law, Mauricio's sister, who immediately contacted the authorities in Huixquilucan. By mid-morning, police officers were at the house. This was not a case of a child wandering off into the street or getting lost in a park. This was a 4-year-old girl with severe physical limitations who had vanished from a locked, gated home in one of the most secure neighborhoods in Mexico. The circumstances were deeply troubling. Within hours, the case exploded into a national media sensation. Lizette Farah appeared on television, her face streaked with tears, begging for whoever had taken her daughter to bring her back. Flyers with Paulette's photo were distributed across the city. Billboards went up. Public service announcements ran on buses and subway trains. The story dominated the news cycle. People across Mexico were transfixed by the mystery. How could a disabled child simply disappear from her own bedroom? Mauricio Gebara also made public appeals, recounting that he had gone out to exercise early on the morning of March 22nd, and that when he returned, Paulette was already missing. He pleaded for anyone with information to come forward. The family offered a reward. Lizette even made a televised phone call to the alleged kidnapper, promising that there would be no reprisals if Paulette was returned safely. The desperation in her voice was palpable. Meanwhile, investigators launched a full-scale search. Forensic teams combed through the house. Tracking dogs were brought in to sniff for Paulette's scent. The dogs searched the bedroom, the hallways, the entire property. They alerted in several places, including near Paulette's bed, but investigators dismissed these alerts, believing the dogs were simply picking up residual scent from where Paulette had been before she disappeared. The search expanded beyond the home. Volunteers scoured the surrounding neighborhood, checking parks, empty lots, construction sites. Helicopters flew overhead. Nothing. As the days passed, the investigation took a darker turn. The Attorney General of the State of Mexico, Alberto Bazbaz, publicly announced that this was now being treated as a homicide investigation. Inconsistencies began to emerge in the statements given by Paulette's parents and the two nannies. All four adults were questioned extensively. Their stories did not align perfectly. Small details differed. Timelines were vague. On April 3rd, authorities took the extraordinary step of placing Mauricio Gebara, Lizette Farah, and the Casimiro sisters under arraigo, a form of house arrest used in Mexico to detain suspects while an investigation continues. They were moved to a hotel, where they would remain under supervision while forensic experts returned to the house to conduct a full reconstruction of the events of that night. The public was shocked. Were the parents involved? Had something terrible happened inside that home? On the night of March 31st, 9 days after Paulette disappeared, investigators were back inside the Gebara home, retracing their steps, trying to piece together what had happened. It was late, around 2 in the morning. As they moved through Paulette's bedroom, someone noticed a smell. It was faint at first, but unmistakable. The smell of decomposition. They turned their attention to Paulette's bed. The same bed that had been searched multiple times. The same bed where a family friend had even slept during the search, trying to support the family. The same bed that had been visible in the background of Lizette Farah's tearful televised interviews. An officer lifted the mattress. And there, wedged tightly between the mattress and the foot of the bed frame, wrapped in blankets and sheets, was Paulette's body. She was curled in a small space, her head and torso compressed by the weight of the bedding. She had been there the entire time. For 9 days, as police searched, as dogs sniffed, as cameras rolled, as the nation watched, Paulette had been in her bed. The discovery was immediately met with disbelief and outrage. How was this possible? How could trained forensic investigators, experienced police officers, and professional tracking dogs miss a body that was right there in the room? The public demanded answers. The media coverage became even more intense. Theories exploded across news channels and social media. Some believed the police were incompetent. Others suspected a cover-up. Many were convinced that Paulette's body had been placed there after the initial searches, that someone had moved her. The autopsy results were released shortly after. The medical examiner determined that Paulette had died of mechanical asphyxiation due to obstruction of her nasal cavities and thorax-abdominal compression. In simpler terms, she had suffocated. The forensic report concluded that Paulette had likely turned herself around in bed during the night, moving toward the foot of the bed, and had become trapped in the narrow space between the mattress and the bed frame. Unable to free herself, and unable to call for help, she had asphyxiated under the weight of the blankets and the pressure of the confined space. The official conclusion was that Paulette's death was an accident. According to the investigation led by Attorney General Bazbaz, there was no evidence of foul play. The forensic analysis indicated that her body had not been moved after death. She had died where she was found, likely within hours of being put to bed on the night of March 21st. But the public was not convinced. How could forensic experts have missed her during the initial searches? The answer, according to officials, was a combination of factors. First, the space where Paulette's body was found was extremely tight and difficult to see without fully disassembling the bed. Second, the blankets and sheets were wrapped around her in such a way that her body was not immediately visible. Third, the tracking dogs had alerted near the bed, but investigators at the time believed the dogs were detecting old scent, not realizing the significance of the alert. And finally, the smell of decomposition had not become strong enough to be noticeable until several days into the search. Attorney General Baz later admitted that the investigation had been flawed. He acknowledged that investigators had failed to search Paulette's bed and bedroom fully during the initial sweep. It was a devastating admission, one that fueled public anger and grief. How could such a basic, fundamental error have been made? How could a child's bed not have been thoroughly searched in a missing persons case? In the days following the discovery of Paulette's body, tensions within the family reached a breaking point. Mauricio Gebara and Lisette Farah, who had been united in their public pleas for their daughter's return, began to turn on each other. During the investigation, Baz had publicly named Lisette as the only suspect in what he initially believed to be a homicide. Speculation swirled that Lisette, overwhelmed by the demands of caring for a disabled child, had somehow been involved in Paulette's death. Lisette vehemently denied any wrongdoing, and the theory was eventually dropped once the autopsy confirmed accidental asphyxiation. But the damage was done. The couple's marriage crumbled under the weight of suspicion, grief, and media scrutiny. On April 4th, a judge granted freedom to Paulette's parents and the two nannies. The arraigo was lifted. There was no evidence of criminal wrongdoing. No charges were filed. The official stance was clear. Paulette's death had been a tragic accident, the result of a terrible confluence of circumstances and a child who could not save herself. But even with the official conclusion, questions remained. Why had the forensic team not dismantled the bed during the first search? Why had the tracking dog's alerts been ignored? And perhaps most painfully, if the investigation had been conducted properly from the beginning, could Paulette have been found in time? The answer to that last question, according to the autopsy, was no. Paulette had likely died within hours of her disappearance, long before the first search teams arrived. But that knowledge did little to ease the public's anger or the family's grief. Lisette Farah later fought to gain access to the full investigative files, filing multiple injunctions in an attempt to review the records and understand exactly how the authorities had reached their conclusions. She wanted answers. She wanted to know why it had taken 9 days to find her daughter in a place that should have been searched on day one. Her requests were denied. The political fallout from the case was swift. Alberto Baz, the Attorney General who had overseen the investigation, faced intense public criticism. Opposition parties called for his resignation. In May of 2010, less than 2 months after Paulette's body was found, Baz stepped down from his position. He defended the investigation and maintained that the conclusion was correct, but he acknowledged that public confidence in his office had been shattered. Paulette Gebara Farah was buried at the Panteón Francis de San Joaquin, a cemetery in Mexico City. She was just 4 years old. In May of 2017, 7 years after her death, her remains were exhumed and cremated. The case of Paulette Gebara Farah remains one of the most debated and controversial in modern Mexican history. To this day, many people refuse to accept the official explanation. Online forums, true crime communities, and social media discussions continue to dissect every detail of the case, proposing alternative theories and questioning the investigative process. Some believe the autopsy findings were manipulated. Others point to inconsistencies in the timeline provided by the medical examiner, noting that early reports suggested Paulette had been dead for 5 to 9 days when her body was found, which would not align with the death on the night of March 21st. What is undeniable is that serious mistakes were made. A child's bed was not properly searched. Alerts from trained tracking dogs were dismissed. And for 9 days, a little girl lay undiscovered in her own room while the world searched for her everywhere else. Whether those mistakes were the result of incompetence, negligence, or something more sinister is a question that continues to haunt those who followed the case. Paulette's story is a reminder of how fragile life can be, and how quickly tragedy can strike even in the safest of places. It is also a stark illustration of the importance of thorough, meticulous investigative work, especially in cases involving vulnerable victims. Small oversights can have devastating consequences. And when those oversights are made public, they erode trust in the very systems designed to protect us. What do you think really happened in this case? Do you believe the official explanation, or do you think there's more to the story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, but please keep them respectful to Paulette and her family. If you'd like to see more cold case investigations like this, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it so more people can learn about these stories. And if you have any information related to any unsolved case, always contact the authorities. Even the smallest detail can make a difference.